Hey sports fans, welcome back to Bison Overtime. I'm Hallie Opsel.
I'm Charlotte Davignon.
And we can't wait to talk about touchdowns.
And some hoops.
Let's go.
Charlotte and Hallie are playing tricks, and so is Mother Nature. As even though April Fool's was yesterday, 3 to 5 inches of snow is coming down here in Fargo, but the Bison Overtime show must go on. So come on in, and we welcome you back inside our Fargo studios. I'm Grant Hubbard, Peter Avelka, and Ethan Eibach alongside. Thanks to Hallie and Charlotte for that intro. But Ethan, back to our roots, Bison football chatter, FCS football chatter, I should say.
Yeah, we're not moving to FBS yet. We got to cover some of this FCS all-time list first.
Anything you want to add about Peter? That real FCS chatter we've gotten to talk about here first time.
No, I'm super excited because we're switching to FBS, but I do remember, being a little kid, being a little Peter, and watching FCS every Saturday, or either going to the games, and kind of excited to showcase some of these memories that I have and a lot of these stats.
Yeah, so a couple quick notes before we get into what we want to talk about. NDSU had a new president was named, Dr. Marshall Stewart. He currently serves as the Executive Vice President for External Engagement and as the Chief of Staff at Kansas State. A lot of ties between Kansas State and North Dakota State, so he'll be the new president. He takes office on May 28th. So, Dr. Stewart, welcome to Fargo. We're glad to have you. And another quick note, the Bison on April Fool's Day decided we're going to go join the Pac-12 for wrestling, as they'll join Oregon State and fellow affiliate members Air Force, Cal Poly, Cal State Bakersfield, Little Rock, Northern Illinois, Northern Colorado, and South Dakota State as members of Pac-12 in wrestling, so that happened as well. But what we really want to talk about is the Final Four, of course. Yeah, our bracket did not do so great. We'll bring that up next week when it's all over. But so your Final Four, UConn and Illinois, and Arizona and Michigan. Peter, what do we got on this so far?
Something we got is, we're obviously going to talk about the Duke collapse and the Dan Hurley incident, but we're going to talk about the Illinois matchup, the UConn matchup, and we're going to touch on the Arizona Michigan because I think that could be kind of like the NFC Championship for the NFL last year. I think that's the real championship game in my eyes. Illinois, it's going to be sharpshooters, and they like to attack the paint and all that nature. UConn, on the other hand, they are so dynamic with solo ball, Caravan, and the athletic big. And then Michigan and Arizona. I mean, Michigan's the heavy favorites going into this thing, guys.
Sure.
But Michigan, they kicked Tennessee. But, I mean, that wasn't even a game. No. I swear the viewership dropped in the second half like flies. But I'm just going to quickly brief over the odds. Michigan is plus 155, so they are the favorites going into the Final Four. Yep. Arizona follows a second. Illinois is plus 420, and UConn is last in odds. I really disagree with that because I think UConn is tremendous, and I think they were probably the best team to come out of that side of the bracket, and we kind of touched on how hard it was going to be to get out of that bracket.
Yeah, if the betting man that I am, I would hammer the 650, place like a $10 bet on this because you don't want to bet against Dan Hurley. But no. I think they can definitely get by UConn, but like you said, I think the Michigan-Arizona game, I think that's the national championship.
And Grant, you touched on the question about should have Dan Hurley got a technical for a headbutt.
I'm interested what you guys think about this before I chime in. Go ahead.
So as a basketball standpoint, the game's high. It was the best region, and watching it live, it was so loud in that arena that either it was a misclarification of time or it was just Dan Hurley being a bad man. But no, applaud to Dan Hurley. He is crazy. He is crazy at basketball, and it just kind of tells you a different story of what if you took the Los Angeles job. I mean, for UConn to go to 3 Final Fours in 4 years, that is an insane run with all this NIL talk and all this retaining the roster. It's just masterclass.
Absolutely. I would not have teed him up. Okay, I didn't notice it in the moment after Mullins made the 3. I just thought, they're going to a timeout, and then Duke will inbound the ball, and the game's going to end because there's no way they're going to get a shot off in that amount of time. It's the people after the game. Now, I don't know if it was Duke fans crying or UConn fans. I don't know, but I would not have teed him up. Even Roger Ayers, the official, is like, I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and he was right in front of Hurley when that happened. So I didn't have a problem with it personally. Are you really going to tee somebody up in that moment? No, you're not going to do that. Interrupts the flow of the game. You're just not going to do that. And the thing with Roger Ayers, it's disappointing because he's a good official. Mm-hmm. He's been to 7 Final Fours, I think he's officiated, and that's what he's going to be known for, which is disappointing because he's a really good official. So I would not have teed him up. It would have been wrong if he did get teed up for that. Like the Duke radio call, which is still embarrassing. embarrassing. Like, it's totally on brand for Duke. Oh, I made the 3. At least have a little more excitement. Like, it's a big play regardless of which side of the aisle you're on. So I wouldn't have teed him up, but that's me.
And folks, there was less than 2 seconds left on the clock.
Right, exactly.
And it was loud, and there was a timeout, and they're trying to get clarification. So yes, I agree.
So
don't.
You're not teaming up for that.
Yeah, do not team up for that.
Yeah, it was the heat of the moment thing, and I think what I heard is he was just trying to hear the ref talk, and I think he just got it. He's kind of like an emotional guy, and he gets in your grill sometimes.
But you saw Roger Ayers put his hand on Hurley's side just to tell him, like, hey, we're gonna look at the clock here. Like, so Dan didn't react, but I don't think he could hear him either.
Yeah,
so I don't think that really matters.
It was kind of just a heat of the moment thing. He wasn't even mad at the ref. It just kind of looked like that. It's like that famous picture of Carson Wentz giving Doug Peterson a dirty look, and he's not even looking at Doug Peterson. It's kind of that kind of thing.
That should have been the real question after the game. It should have been, what happened to Dan Hurley's pants in the locker room? Do we know what happened to his pants? He's in a bath towel, like, after the game. Like, where does pants go is what I want to know.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. But as we go along here, let's just talk about the recruits that the Bison did get in this last. They have 4 more recruits over the weekend. I'll just go through them quickly. Let's not talk about that yet. We're not there yet. New commits. So Jack Tabbert, 6'5", 270-pound offensive line from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, joins Tucker Tiedemann. So that team in Milwaukee had 3 Division I offensive linemen on it, so that's pretty impressive. He had offers from Northern Illinois and New Mexico. He actually canceled a visit to Albuquerque in order to come to NDSU, so that's pretty cool. He had offers also from Liberty, Harvard, UND, Florida Atlantic, Central Michigan, South Dakota, and Yale. That's pretty good. And NDSU was his first offer, though, so he chose NDSU. Dorian Ward, 6'3", 215-pound edge rusher from Jefferson City High School in Minneapolis. We saw him at spring practice last Friday. Out of Minneapolis, it offers from South Dakota State and Cornell. This will become a common theme where the Bison will start beating out South Dakota guys that South Dakota State wants because one's FBS, one's FCS. Ashton Vanderbeek, 6'2", 205-pound. He was a quarterback and a linebacker. He's going to play linebacker at NDSU from Neenah, Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin guy, and Paul Sex, the head coach. And then lastly, Andrew Matt, 6'6", 290 pounds from Carrington, North Dakota. That's a big boy that the Cardinals have in Carrington. His other offers from Minot State, still a pretty young guy, so Division II offers his other offer. And that's, of course, on top of Cody Braun, Jack Noonan, Austin Whittaker, Robbie Duclona, who we talked about last week. So the recruits, the 27 recruiting cycle starting to filter in a little bit, and you're starting to see, Ethan, a lot of these guys, South Dakota State offers, they're choosing NDSU.
Yeah, and it's funny because some of the media members down there will say, well, this isn't going to affect recruiting because for all those years, NDSU used that you can compete for championships here. You can't do that at the FBS level. Well, you can because you can compete for conference championships. And from what we've heard, a lot of these guys that entered the portal, like Nathaniel Staling and Bo Johnson, a big thing was playing against more quality competition. And you do that at the FBS level. You're going to do that in the Mountain West. You're not going to do that playing. I think South Dakota State plays New Haven this year.
Yeah.
They play Murray State. That's not good for the home schedule, but.
No.
The Bison are going to win these recruiting battles every time, almost every time.
And the one thing to add about all these recruiting profiles and everything, guys, they're beefing up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 290, 270, and once you get those kids on those college weight plans, we could expect those guys to be in the probably 310, 320-ish by their side.
They're making up for the mistakes that Matt Entz made. I think in recruiting is what they're doing there. If I can get South Dakota State's schedule, I'm going to try to pull it up for us if I can.
The home schedule is not in favor of the fans. I'll say that.
It's really,
Yeah.
my computer's being slow, I apologize. But if I can get it up, I'll show it. But it's going to be interesting to see how South Dakota State recruits from here on out just because of, okay, your rival is now gone. What are you going to do in recruiting? Can you win as many recruiting battles against NDSU? I don't think they can. That's going to be a problem for them moving forward. South Dakota State's home schedule. Here we go. New Haven on September 12th. Youngstown State, September 19th. Eastern Illinois on September 26th. At Illinois State, at UND, they host Murray State, they host South Dakota, and they host Indiana State.
Indiana State and Murray State on the same
Woo-hoo!
schedule.
That'll be a fun schedule for them to have at the Dyke House, right?
You know what that reminds me of is 2023 when we came back to Fargo after the bad UND game, and you play Western Illinois and Murray State at home in front of about 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It's just
That's
not
bad.
good. Not good for attendance. And I think South Dakota State attendance will be fine for a couple of years here,
Yeah.
but once they realize this isn't as fun as what we see, especially if NDSU has success right away, they're going to want to move up. They're going to want that, and the attendance will go down too, like it did here.
And the thing about that also is there's kind of a downward trend of talent when you're playing against them, and it's not setting you up for the postseason.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be very curious to see what happens, in late November, early December-ish on the first round matchup, and kind of the competition in the FCS now.
Okay, so let's get into the so-called meat of the game plan here today, which we're going to go heavy. We like doing rankings and top 10s, top 25s. So we're going to start. We have two lists today. We're going to start with the top 10 FCS teams of the Frisco era. So 2010 through 2024. We'll do this quickly. The number 10 team, the 2011 North Dakota State Bison. They won the title that year. They won the outright Missouri Valley Football Conference Championship. I'll go through just some brief numbers on them to see on the screen. Quarterback was Brock Jensen. The best offensive player was DJ McNorton, the senior from Texas, who had a great year. Marcus Williams, who would not be here in today's era if he actually played if NIL was a thing back in 2011, he would have been long gone. They're big wins. They beat Minnesota at TCF. They beat second-ranked Northern Iowa, and they beat Sammy for the national title. Yeah, that's a good way to kick off a list. I think it was with that title team.
Yeah, and something that people don't really notice, like this whole team was almost all sophomores because of that senior class in 13. The senior class in 2011 was really good. I mean, DJ McNorton, I believe Warren Holloway was a senior. There was a lot of guys.
Coulter Boyer, I think, was on that team in 2011.
He was at least a junior. I'm
John
pretty sure
Pike and Chad Wilson were seniors on that team.
It was the group that just started it all, and really the FCS didn't get the recognition that it has now. And this is the team that started all that. And the point differential isn't crazy in the playoffs, but they took care of business. And by the way, that Georgia Southern team that they put 35 on, that Georgia Southern team competed with Alabama for like
they ran for 300 and something yards on Alabama, who won a national title that year.
Could not stop them. Nick Saban's famous words.
Could not stop them. Yeah.
And another thing is that when was the last time we've seen an NDSU receiver have 75 plus catches and over 1,000 yards? Yes. But man, Warren Holloway was that dude.
The old card played like a Maserati at points that year. He was a damn good player. I mean, 31 points a game. The offense doesn't wow you. It was not meant. The offense was not meant to wow you. 31 points a game, but defensively they crushed you. 12 points a game. 279 point differential. That's pretty good. Again, the point differential in the playoffs isn't great, but another ho-hum 14-1 season for NDSU. The number 9. This is where South Dakota State gets some love. The 2022 South Dakota State team won the FCS title over North Dakota State. They won the Missouri Valley outright that year. Gronowski, Tucker Kraft, Adam Bach was probably the best defensive player in the country at that point. John Stiglmeyer went out on top that year. Their key wins, 2-point win in Fargo. They came back from, I think, at least 10 points down to win that game. Yep. They won a thriller with UND, and they crushed NDSU in the national title game.
Yeah, it's kind of goes back to what I said either last week or 2 weeks ago. It took SDSU 2 all-time teams to get to that point, and that's kind of like, and that was NDSU's like 14th best team in the FCS era, and then took that much to beat them twice. And the players, you go down the list, the players were insane. It's crazy that Tucker Kraft was technically only a junior that year, and he went into the NFL draft because he was that good. Makes you think what could have happened if he played the next year, but it's what's Coach Stiglmeyer was kind of building for years. He wanted to get to that point, and he finally got the group that he wanted. And the main thing is the quarterback. He finally got the quarterback that could beat NDSU. And
Gronowski had so many weapons.
Yeah.
We're talking about Amar Johnson. We're talking about Isaiah Johnson. We're talking about Jackson Jenke. To just spread the wealth on that offense. And so every time they laced up the cleats, you just knew it was going to be a dogfight, and a physical dogfight at that point.
Yeah, their point differentials are crazy, plus 276 in the regular season, plus 102 in the postseason. That lone loss was that 5-3 sleeper to Iowa early in the year that I don't think either team wants to talk about ever again. But that's number 9. The number 8 team, the 2021 Bison, FCS and Missouri Valley Football Conference Championships. Cam Miller just coming into his own as a starting quarterback. The whole playoffs was Hunter Lipke. He was the whole show on offense. Jackson Hankey was really good in the middle for them. Matt Entz, his second national championship, they won their key wins, 16-10 slugfest against UND, the Lipke show against James Madison, and then the just the absolute demolition of Montana State in the championship game. I don't know where you would classify it in terms of, if you want to rank the 10 title teams, where you would put it, but it's definitely on the lower end, but it's on the better end of the Frisco teams.
I think this is the most underrated. I'll go out and give out a hot take. I think this is the most underrated Bison championship team because that famous picture of that whole offense got a chance in the NFL, and that includes Cam Miller now. It's Hunter Lipke and Christian Watson were in the same offense for 2 years. That's just insane to say. But Quincy Patterson, I mean, they went 5-0 with him, and then Cam Miller comes in, and he's one of the best QBs in the country right away, and he struggled the next year. But the defense is what I want to highlight here. You mentioned Jackson Hankey. Spencer Wagey didn't even play that year.
Yep.
And they only allowed 11 points a game. That's ridiculous. And the JMU game, it speaks for itself. That's one of the greatest games in the Fargo Dome history.
Yep.
I mean, going into it, like you talked about the defense. I mean, you got Hankey, you got Desir Cox, you got Cole Wisniewski, and you have Dawson Weber in that secondary. Yeah. But then it's like you got Tamika Williams.
And Michael Tutsi was back there as well.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So.
And then Quincy Patterson, and then Hunter Lemke. Like, nobody was stopping this team on the ground.
Yep.
Yes, they had a quarterback change. But offensively, teams couldn't physically compare to this team. And that's why I think this is one of the most underrated teams, and this kind of the team I grew up being like, okay, this is kind of like the reincarnation of those early 2010 teams.
The next was probably the best. You can make a case. There are a couple teams that you could argue were the best to not win a national title. 2017, James Madison is on that list. They were the national runner-up to NDSU. They won the CAA outright that year in dominating fashion. Brian Shore was basically the heir apparent to Easton Stick. Riley Stapleton was just a nuts player offensively. Andrew Anker, I think I would throw Simeon Robinson there on defense. They had Jordan Brown, Raven Green, Jimmy Moreland. They had a really great secondary back then. Mike Houston, kind of a no-nonsense kind of head coach. He came from the Citadel, so you'd expect that. Their key wins, they beat Elon by 28. They had to come back to beat Weber State in the quarterfinals. Yeah. And then the 10-turnover game against South Dakota State, a game that Jack fans or someone that we like to talk about was never going to mention this game ever again.
Yeah, that was, funny enough about that game, coming into that semifinal, because we knew the Bison were going to beat Sam Houston.
Oh, yeah.
But that's South Dakota State. I was a little nervous if South Dakota State would have won because of the banged-up secondary and Jake Winicky, Dallas Goddard.
Yep.
I think South Dakota State that year, I thought that was one of their best teams that never won it, and it turns out JMU was just that much better. I think JMU, you look back at FCS seasons, going into the 2013 year, you probably could have just said NDSU was going to win it. 18, you could have said NDSU was going to win it, and 23, South Dakota State. 2017, I thought JMU was going to run away with it, and that's probably the one time the Bison have gone into Frisco
as an underdog.
Legitimate
underdog.
And won.
Like not just like in the point spread, but you thought JMU was actually the better team.
Yes.
Like I think in 19, JMU was actually favored.
Which is insane.
And in 24, Montana State was favored. But you kind of knew Montana State and the Bison were pretty even.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, the reason they were underdogs in 19 was because Trey Lance was a freshman.
Yes.
That's the main reason why they were underdogs. You knew why they were an underdog in 2017 against James Madison. Against the Jacks, they forced turnovers on the Rabbits' first 5 possessions of the game. I mean, they pillar to post. They were just better than that than that South Dakota State team.
I remember watching this James Madison team, and I remember when they drew the bid to play the NDSU in the national championship. I'm like, oh, this might be this might terrorize the rain, a little bit. But I think just Brian Shore, just a great, it was his second year. I think it was second or third year at the helm.
Yep.
And kind of slumped, but just going into the championship game, I was totally suspecting a great game, and guess what? We did get a good game for
One of
the
the
national
best ever.
championship.
Yeah, but what people remember about that game is how many missed opportunities James Madison had in that game. I think they had 2 red zone interceptions. They had countless drop passes. I'm not saying the referees were the best in that game either for James Madison. There was a Riley Stapleton fumble that probably was not a fumble. And Marcus Marshall had a drop or 2. I mean, they also had some freaky things, like Nate Tangway's catching balls off his shoe tops. Like, it was just kind of one of those games where the forces were working against JMU, and they still almost won the game. The team that beat him clocks in at number 6, which is that North Dakota State team from 2017. Again, won the national title, won the Valley outright. I'd say Stick and Shore were pretty much the same quarterback at that point. Bruce Anderson, this is really his coming out year. Nick DeLuca on defense was insane. This was one of Chris Kleiman's better teams. They beat Eastern Washington, which turned out really not to be a great win because Eastern Washington missed the playoffs this year. They won the Thriller in Youngstown that night game, and then they beat JMU in the national title game. What stands out, look at that point differential.
Man.
Plus 407 and plus 113 in the playoffs is due because they drew Sam Houston State, which was probably, what was the radio thing that I heard after the game? That's the worst coach team I've ever seen play in a semi. It was something along those lines, but they overwhelmed their competition before they pulled the upset against James Madison.
I think this was the most angry and motivated Bison team ever.
No
because
doubt.
the first time, you go into the season not the favorites to win the whole thing. Kleiman had those guys ready to go, and it was a stereotypical NDSU season. You start out 6, 7, 8-0, and they started 8-0. You drop one down the road, and then you just go on and you make the run in the playoffs. And the point differential probably gets boosted a little bit by the opponents they had in the playoffs. I mean, San Diego, Wofford, Sam Houston. We'll take that playoff.
That's a
run
pretty
any
easy,
day.
pretty easy schedule.
Yeah, and
postseason.
The defense here is just, this team to me, we know coaches don't like doing comparisons. 2017 to 2021 are like mirror images for me, just because the defenses were so dominant, the offenses just ran the ball. You had a few stars on offense. Quarterback that was very much a Bison quarterback, just ran the offense. And this team probably would be 8 or 9 if they would have.
Yeah, this was back in that time where Easton would be 11 of 13 for 180 yards,
Yep.
2 touchdowns, and
That's
that was
all
just
he
kind
needed.
of that's just how he was back then.
Yep.
And it's crazy you say that because I think he had one of his best statistical years, having that 28-8 touchdown interception ratio. But then we have to highlight Bruce Anderson. This was he was a dog in this year. I mean, 234 touches, over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. I mean, and it was a three-headed running back room with Anderson, Brooks, and Lance Dunn. And don't forget, running quarterback Easton Stick.
Yep.
So, and they were motivated after the loss to South Dakota State. So, I mean, it's like you guys said, they were hungry for revenge, and it was an amazing title game. Not an amazing title game, but amazing run for NDSU.
I like to be honest with me. Bruce Anderson, first touchdown of the game. Did he score?
I
don't think he
but,
scored.
I mean, when
but
you're this far from the goal line, you're going to score anyway. I
it
feel like
was
that's overblown, but
the elbows down that, and that was just enough to get it across the goal line.
I feel like that part's a little overblown.
Yeah, that's true.
You're down. It's 3rd and goal from the half.
But according to Mike
line.
Vanderville, the ruling on the fan stands. So that's all that meant. Not the field, the fan stands. Number 5, top half of our list. I think one of the most, I want to say forgotten, but it's definitely one of the more underrated teams, was the 2016 JMU team that beat NDSU in the semis. Just remember, this team was defined by one guy, Khalid Abdullah. That guy was nuts. We'll talk about him later in the show. Andrew Anker, again, another dominant defensive player. Brian Shore really coming into his own. They averaged 46 points per game that year, which is crazy. Their key wins, again, beating the Bison. They beat Youngstown State in the national title game, who was having their own Cinderella run that year. They beat Eastern Washington in the semis. Beating Richmond 47-43, that was their big CAA win on the year. But again, plus 115 in the playoffs. And I think people forget about that game is that they were up 17-0 on the Bison. The Bison came back to tie it, and then they go on a 10-0 run to win the game because Chris Kleiman thought it was a great idea to kick a 50-yard field goal with Cam Peterson, of all people, who, other than one kick, was not the most clutch kicker in the world.
Yeah, this is the one team that, other than obviously Illinois State, but this is the one team that came into the Fargo and was actually the better team.
They were better,
won the
yes.
game. And this is back, people forget, like the CAA now is so watered down. Now this is when the CAA was arguably the second best conference, and that's ahead of the Big Sky back then, because Big Sky was not dominant. And Khalid Abdullah, I'll stand by, he might be the best running back to come into the Fargo.
You know how watered down the Big Sky was in 2016? UND got a 7 seed.
Yeah,
that's how watered down the league was that year.
It wasn't good.
But one last thing on Jay before you talk, Peter, is that I think people forget, Mike Houston said it before the 17 championship game, he said, in 2016, we ambushed the field. When he was so right, because they were quietly probably the best team in the country. And the Bison probably drew the worst matchup because they were down, 3 defensive starters by that point in the year? They had no DeLuca, no Nate Tangway, I believe, and Trey Dempsey played but was injured.
Yep.
So they were not themselves defensively, and you got to give hats off to JMU because they played pretty much the perfect game to beat NDSU with.
This was that game against NDSU in December. That shocked me as a Bison fan.
Yeah.
Because to that point, I could never see them losing a game.
No.
So when I saw that, and my parents ended up going to the game, I didn't. But when I was watching, I'm like, no way. Like, packed Fargo Dome, and I was like, oh my, I could not see them lose. But then, they lost. But I think it's the highlight on the offense. I mean, Khalid Abdullah had 300 touches. Caldon Johnson had 115, and Trey Sharp had 111 carries. How many rooms in the country can have that many touches? And then Brian Shore had his best statistical season with JMU with 3,000 yards and a 29-6 touchdown interception ratio. I think looking back, if you look, in the future when you look back at this game, I'm like, yeah, JMU was definitely the better team, and they had all the statisticals to prove it. And even on the field, they're physical. And I may add that NDSU was injured. But still, it was a physical game, and that 10-0 run solidified the game.
Yeah, they definitely earned it that year. So did number 4 team on our list, the 2019 Bison team, one of the undefeateds from this run for NDSU, won the national title that year. The 2019 Valley champs Again, this was the Trey Lance show, won the Walter Payton that year. Christian Watson, you could make the case Trey Lance was their best offensive. He was their best weapon overall, but Watson was their best receiver. Jabril Cox playing defense. If a heat-seeking missile wore green and gold and wore 42, that's what Jabril Cox was. Matt Entz, his first national title. They won the game against South Dakota State after college game day. All the hoopla around that game. They found a way to win it because of Matt Entz. What do you say after the game? I had to check his life insurance policy after the 4th and 1. They beat Montana State in the semis, which has become a reoccurring joke that they just beat Montana State in the postseason. And then they beat JMU 28-20. I just want to highlight just the playoff run. It's not going to wow you when you look back at their postseason run.
No.
They started slow against Nichols. They won 37-13 in a game that really was closer than the score indicated. Nichols played them pretty tough. And then the slog with Illinois State that we thought they should be able to beat Illinois State, right? They killed them the first time. They won 9-3. And if Bryce Jefferson could complete a pass, they may have lost that game. Then they bulldozed Montana State. And then you kind of knew when they played JMU, it was 1-2, sure. The Bison were the better team. They were up by 15 in the fourth quarter. JMU made it close. They got to the goal line, and Ben DiNucci is throwing a pick he should have never thrown. But they just look at the point differential on there. Plus 399. That tells you how good they were. They only plus 66 in the playoffs, as I alluded to, but still, undefeated team. Probably had the best quarterback season ever in FCS history.
Yes.
They're going to be in the top 5.
Yeah, and this season's really, obviously you throw out the playoff run from this 25 season, it's so comparable to me because there were so many unknowns going into 2019 as there was in 25. A one-year starting quarterback, not really a new head coach because Polasek was in year 2, but very similar years. The quarterbacks had really good seasons. You win in Brookings. I just remember that Brookings game, Lee Corso putting on the Bison head. That's an all-time moment, and we'll never forget that one. But the playoff run was very much they kind of treaded water until that semifinal where Matt Entz woke the guys up. It's like, hey, we got to play well. And then the JMU game, that if they get a first down when they're up by 15, it's not a close game. It's just it was kind of a frustrating last 5 minutes, but definitely a team that belongs in this top 5.
You guys know I'm a big stats guy.
Yep.
But looking back at these stats, Trey Lance led the team, obviously in passing, but he also led the rushing attack too. He had 1,100 yards and 2,800 passing yards. I mean, what quarterback has that? That's the best quarterback play I've seen at NDSU. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but then it's also you had Ty Brooks, you had Adam Cofield, you had Kobe Johnson, but then you also have Christian Watson on the outside with 732 receiving yards. But the defense, Jackson Hankey, Jabril Cox, Derek Tuska, and Spencer Wage, those 2 guys had double-digit sacks for NDSU. And going through these rosters and going through the stats, this was probably the only 1-2 punch that had double-digit sacks. And so Spencer Wade, it was an amazing to watch. Code Green go crazy on defense. Yeah, the number 3 team. Talk about defense. This Jackrabbits team from 2023 might be the best defense the FCS has ever seen. Won the national title, beat Montana for the national championship. They won the conference outright. Mark Gronowski, of course, at quarterback. He was probably the best player in FCS that year. Isaiah Davis, bulldoze of a running back, was around. Adam Bach still around defense. Jimmy Rogers in his first year as head coach, dominated as the head coach. They won the game that really kind of set the tone for the year, beating Montana State on that pass that may have been a touchdown, but we'll never know. Ethan would attest that it was a touchdown. They dominated North Dakota State 33-16, a game that wasn't even that close. They were just so much better than the Bison that year, and of course beating Montana. The one thing all you need to know about this team are the 4 playoff games they had. They gave up a grand total of 15 points in 4 games. I don't think the Bison have come close to that number at all. I mean, now their playoff run isn't great. They beat Mercer, Villanova, UAlbany, and the Grizz. I'm not going to take anything away from because of their playoff run. You get the hand you're dealt, and that was the hand they were dealt. They dominated with it. So 15 points in 4 games, best postseason defensive performance we've ever seen.
Yeah. I will say Albany's probably one of
the worst semifinalists to ever get to the semis.
That team had 0 chance, and it was cold out. It was a Friday night, I believe.
Yeah, it was.
It was not pretty, but the FCS this year, they're just Montana was overachievers getting to the title game. South Dakota State was clearly the best team. And I said it earlier in the show, it's like coming into the years, who's the expected favorite? We didn't even need to play the season this year. We knew South Dakota State was winning, especially with the guys that came back with their COVID years. We forget a lot of the guys had COVID years. The Yankees came back with that. Zach Hines came back with that. I feel like there's more defensive players, but yeah, this was definitely deserving of the top 3. And we know that our friends in Brookings won't appreciate us putting them this low, but this is where they belong.
Yeah.
When I believe a junior, I was at Applebee's, and I remember I was grubbing after a basketball game, and I remember looking at the score, and I had to take a double take at the Albany game. I'm like, no, I was like, this is not like real, because it was like third quarter, and I'm like, okay, this is like when you like exit sim, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this team was, you kind of knew like there was a clear favorites going into it. Isaiah Johnson had 1,500 rushing yards, and Gronowski had 3,000 passing yards and 30-5 touchdown interception ratio. No one was stopping this team, and especially in the Missouri Valley Conference that wasn't sluggish, but just wasn't up to par as some people would have liked. But it's just because how dominant the Jacks were.
Yeah, I mean, 37 points per game offensively, 9.3 points per game defensively. That point differential, 420 to the plus. That if you're 420 points in the black, that's stupid. If any, that's the only word I could use to describe that.
It's like playing Retro Bowl and you got a crazy team and it's the end of the year and you're doing like a recap and it's like, oh yeah, we actually did beat this team by so much, but that point differential is crazy.
Okay, I think we're down to two teams, and I think if you're a Bison fan, you know there are two teams that are left in your box. It's to the 2013 Bison and the 2018 Bison. We went with the 2013 Bison as the number 2 team. National title over Towson, won the conference outright. Brock Jensen, best year of his career. Billy Turner was their best offensive lineman. You put this together. Billy Turner, interesting choice, but I agree with it. With Billy Turner, I mean, 3rd-round draft pick to the Dolphins. I think he was worth it. Marcus Williams, again, would not be here in NIL era if he was still around playing to me. He is around today, but as a coach and as a player. Craig Bowl went out on a high note. I think his 103rd and final victory, I think, was his final count. Again, the win over Kansas State, the comeback to beat Northern Iowa, and the Towson game that Towson maybe they were a physical team, but they weren't one of the best teams to play in a national title game. But Terrence West was the only reason they were there in the first place. Because no offense to Peter Athens, he was not going to do anything against that team.
Yeah, it's complete opposite of what this 2019 team was. You knew what was coming back in 2013. It was just, what was there, 28 seniors, and there was a lot of drama at the end of the year when Craig Bull was leaving, but they went out on a high note. The Kansas State win, one of the biggest wins in school history. You just can't do much arguing with this. I mean, there's so many legends that were on this roster. Marcus Williams, Grant Olson, Le'Veon Perry, Brock Jensen.
I mean, they're heroes to us still.
The list just goes on. This is like, because when we started watching, this is the group that we came up with. So a lot of the kids our age, these are the
So like Brock Jensen is a
guys.
god in our minds, yeah.
Yep, that's how it is.
No, this team was, I think like, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Kansas State team kind of was a snowball. Of like, for me, it was like the snowball of like the hype, you know, because like I always knew they were good, yes, but when they started winning some like the Kansas State game, I'm like, oh, this is like.
Well, it's when they got game day that you knew this was going to be a pretty damn good season when they're beating a Big 12 team in their building and then they go host college game day.
And so I think this was kind of the snowball effect, but 15 touchdowns for Zach Raw. I mean, I can still hear the chants and everything, but no, Brock Jensen, like once again, like you said, it was the best ever collegiate statistical year, 34 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And I think we're forgetting about the rushing game. They had 2 1,200-yard rushers in the year. Like you have Crockett and Ajure. So I mean, it was that's incredible.
Yeah.
So that's why it was kind of that's why it was such a great debate between these two teams.
Yeah.
Because they could be replaced like wishy-washy like that.
Yeah, again, you could flip them between if you wanted to flip the 23 Jackrabbits and the 13 Bison, I wouldn't disagree with you because they're both such dominant teams. With the Bison as well, plus 412 point differential and plus 126 in the postseason, that's pretty good stuff. But I think no surprise from us. The number 1 team was 2018 Bison. This team destroyed everybody they played, and it wasn't even particularly close in any game they played. Other than the game against South Dakota State early in October, the 21-17 win, this where Stick was robbed of a Peyton. He was the best. Duck Hodges was not better than Easton Stick. I'm sorry, it's just not the case. Bruce Anderson, another dominant season. Jabril Cox again. Chris Kleiman goes out on a high note this time. They beat the Jacks twice. The second game was not even as close as the score indicates. They were just the head and shoulders better team that day. I mean, if you're at the point where Derek Tuska is literally rolling over Taryn Christian, you just knew this was not going to be the Jackrabbits' night. 41 points per game, 12.6 points per game defensively, plus 433 point differential, and plus 115 in the postseason. They weren't getting touched this year.
Yeah, Taron Christian might still have some headaches from that
He might.
concussion he
I
got.
think he-
that-
yeah, he was
that day.
concussed, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a good day for the Jacks. But yeah, Easton Stick, this season for him individually reminds me a lot of Cam Miller in 24. It was like he wasn't going to make a mistake, and when he did, it was extremely rare. Ran the offense smoothly, and I mean the run game too. We forget Bruce Anderson and Lance Dunn. They were a duo for 4 years ish, and they were studs this year. They had Dylan Radins on the offensive line. Zach Johnson was there. The defense was unstoppable. I mean, Spencer Wagey played as a true freshman. He dominated basically, and
Greg Menard came back off the ACL as well.
And he was, I think he was better before his injury, but that year he had a really good year as well. But yeah, Derek Tuska and Greg Menard, we need to get a duo back like that. That was pretty dang good.
And we possibly could see one for this upcoming year. But yes, Stick, what amazed me is how he didn't win the Peyton because he had.
There was an anti-NDSU bias still at that point where they just would not give him a Peyton.
Because I mean, how many quarterbacks have close to 700 rushing yards and close to 2,800 passing yards with a mighty 28-7 touchdown interception ratio? I mean, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that can do that in the FCS with a tough FCS schedule and playing in the Missouri Valley.
Yeah.
Like Stick.
And he won 49 games.
Exactly.
And
Like,
so,
what?
I mean,
Without the COVID year.
Without the COVID year,
Yeah.
right. So that
Sorry, Tanner, it doesn't count.
So to recap, the top 10 teams, so 2011 North Dakota State at 10, 22 South Dakota State at 9, 21 Bison at 8, 2017 James Madison is at 7, 2017 North Dakota State is at 6, 2016 James Madison is at 5. My God. Number 4, 2019 North Dakota State. Number 3 is the 23 South Dakota State team. And then 2013 and 2018 Bison teams at 2 and 1. Ethan, if there was a number 11, if you had to add one, I think you could have an honest conversation about a couple Bison teams.
Yep.
But I would also argue 2020-21 Sam Houston could be on this list if you wanted to go there. And maybe 2010 Eastern Washington if you wanted to make a case there as well.
Yeah, I think.
Or Montana State from this past year.
Yeah, I think if we're going the route of a championship team, I think it's got to be a Bison team. I think 2012 I know those Wentz teams weren't the greatest. 14 is debatable. I think if we're going a team that didn't win the championship, I think you have to go Montana State in 24 because that team they dominated all the way up until one bad half against NDSU where Tim Polisic basically just outcoached Brent Vegan. Let's just be honest. And I guess it's hard to say. Sam Houston had a good playoff run. Eastern Washington had a good playoff run. I think they were only a 4 seed, which is crazy to say. But so was GMU in 16. I think I'd have to go Montana State at 24. I think that's the team I would put at 11.
Who would you put there, Peter?
Ooh, like Ethan said, I think it's either a Wentz team or I think it's Montana State. But I think you would have to give the nod to the Bobcats in that realm, just because they almost it's like golf. You can hit a good drive, good iron shot, but then the putter can fall flat, and that's just how the dice rolls.
Yeah, you can make a case for this year's Montana State team or last year's, for example, but. I know we like to laugh at Sam Houston, and it's fun too, but I think their run doesn't get enough credit for just how good it was. Just like they beat Monmouth 21-15, like this. So the spring season when they won the title, they beat the Bison, they beat James Madison, and they beat South Dakota State in the same playoff run. I don't think that gets enough respect. If I had to pick one, I would probably agree with you and say Montana State, but that Sam Houston team deserves some more love than what they got. I mean, we laugh at they got destroyed by the Bison numerous times. I give Casey Keeler credit. He learned from his mistakes. They were just the best team that year in that 2020-21 spring season. So now let's get into what we really want to talk about today.
Yep.
This is going to be interesting for some of you at home, and if you want to score us at home, please do it. If you saw our Twitter, you've already answered this question. Who is the best player that North Dakota State has ever faced during the FCS era? That's a tough question to answer. We're going to try. So top 25. Our criteria before we begin. Contributions and how they did versus NDSU. Did they beat NDSU? Game-changing and game-winning plays in games against the Bison. And the fourth criteria, but is not the sole purpose, is their professional careers. So you may see some pro players on here that are lower than other players. So just keep that in mind. So and Ethan wrote this on here, I'll just read it. Very important to establish. If you played one game and weren't to stand against NDSU, but you were an all-pro in the NFL like Antonio Brown, you will not be listed. Just take that into consideration. Or J.J. Watt, for example. Those two are not on this list. Okay? Just let's get that out in the open. It's about how you played against NDSU. Just NDSU and just solely those games. Okay. Now we have that out of the way. Let's start with number 25 through 21. So the first slide, first five. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback from Colorado, he had one game versus the Bison. He won the game 31-26, 26 of 34 passing in that game for 445 yards, 4 touchdowns and an interception. Mason McCormick at 24, fourth-round draft pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played 8 games against the Bison. He went 5-3 during that time with the Jackrabbits. Gage Gubrud at 23, the quarterback from Eastern Washington, did not win against NDSU. Why he's on there mainly is for the 2016 game. He was 26 of 40 passing for 450 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, one being a pick 6 that may have cost him the game. He had 49 rushing yards in that game. The 2017 game, not so much. 10 of 30 passing, 134 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. Christian Roseboom, who I still think is trying to tear apart Bruce Anderson's ankle. 66 tackles and 1 sack during his games against North Dakota State. He was 2-5 in meetings against NDSU. And then James O'Shaughnessy may be a surprising entry on this list, but we have him on here anyway. The tight end from Illinois State, 1-4 against North Dakota State, 6 catches for 67 yards. However, 2 touchdowns in the championship game. So those are the first 5. Break it down.
Yeah, I think my favorite guy on this list is Gage Gubrud. That guy was, he was what, 5'11"? He could just absolutely sling it.
Yep.
And the weapons he had. Eastern Washington, it's really a shame what's happened to that program because they were so much fun to watch. But, Christian Roseboom could be higher on this list, but I think, he's in that era of Jackrabbits where they could beat NDSU. They just couldn't do it in the playoffs. And then Mason McCormick, he's probably the best lineman South Dakota State's produced so far. And then O'Shaughnessy he was Tucker Kraft for Illinois State. That's who he was basically, with probably a little more speed. And then Shedeur Sanders, as much as we like to hate on that guy, or at least I do anyway, he had a pretty good game against NDSU. He's one of the better QBs they faced overall in the FBS level.
Going into this, going 25 to 21, with the Shedeur Sanders, I knew that the secondary for NDSU would struggle, so that's why I was kind of holding my breath every time he dropped back to pass. But I think he's accurately portrayed right there. Mason McCormick, I remember my dad telling me, this is how I want you to play on the line. Yeah, that didn't really go well. Gubrud, we kind of, like Grant said, you touched on, the first game was tremendous, but that second game he played where all his weapons were depleted, all gone, it was a really rough showing. I believe he went 10 for 30.
Yep.
And then Christian Roseboom, 66 total tackles. I have 3 tackles for loss and 2 forced fumbles, so that dude was just a ball player. And then we're going to go to the tight end from Illinois State. I struggled to look up the stats for him, but that championship game solidified his spot on the list.
Yeah, again, think of those first 5. 4 of them have played in the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's what's stupid, is that O'Shaughnessy just retired from the NFL. He played with Kansas City and Jacksonville. Roseboom just signed with Tampa Bay, I believe, so he's still hanging around. Gubrud played at Washington State after Eastern Washington, hasn't played in the NFL. McCormick is a starting guard for the Steelers. And Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round draft pick, made the Pro Bowl. Take the Pro Bowl however you wish, but that's what we got for that. All right, next group of 5. At number 20, we got Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State. He went 5-0 versus North Dakota State during his time there. 69 rushes for 402 yards and 4 touchdowns. He turned it on against NDSU, as did Jake Winicky from South Dakota State. He still pushed off, I don't care what anybody says. 1-4 versus NDSU. 17 catches, 263 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Riley Stapleton, Josh Hayes' wrestling buddy from James Madison, 1-2 versus NDSU in his career. Did not play in the 16 semifinal. 17 catches for 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those 2 touchdowns came in the 2019 championship game. One of the underrated guys is Lindsey Scott Jr. from Incarnate Word. Only 1 game against NDSU, but he was damn good in that game. 30 of 46 for 282 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 21 carries for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. He passed for 60 touchdowns that year before playing North Dakota State. And then Trey Roberson, my God, was he good. He didn't win a Peyton, but he was just as good as Lindsey Scott was. Only 1 game against NDSU, could have been 2, but lost to Richmond. Yep. He was only 11 for 23 for 157 yards, 3 touchdowns in that game. He threw the 1 pick to Esley Thornton. But what I forgot about that, he ran for 161 yards in that championship game and scored the go-ahead touchdown before Carson's legendary drive. So 20-16, what do we think?
I think these guys are back-to-back. Lindsey Scott and Trey Roberson, they're basically kind of the same player. And then Riley Stapleton and Jake Winicky were basically the same receiver. They both were tight end size playing receiver, and
Yep.
they weren't the speediest guys, but they could move a little bit.
And then with 20, just quick, Isaiah Davis. We were debating between Pierre Strong and Isaiah Davis. I think Davis is the better player. He played better against NDSU than Pierre Strong did.
Yeah.
And I think Isaiah Davis was more of that
The bowling ball running back.
bowling ball running back, but he also could go in the flat. And when he was in the flat, he was a problem. Riley Stapleton, that is a name I really want to forget. And then Lindsey Scott Jr. I remember watching the ESPN pregame show, and they're hyping up Lindsey Scott, rightfully so. But the thing that really amazed me was the way he was able to work on in the pocket and escape in the pocket and find those wide open receivers. And Trey Roberson, amazing quarterback, and I wish NDSU would have got a second chance at getting out of it.
Yeah, Isaiah Davis, we forget. He was drafted by the Jets in the 5th round. Is still on the Jets roster. Was a 2023 All-American. Jake Winicky played in the CFL. He was an All-Star and a Rookie of the Year in the CFL. That's pretty good. And Walter Payton, winner, of course, for Lindsey Scott in 2022. And Trey Roberson, 23-5 as a starter at Illinois State. Is also a CFL All-Star 2019 as a defensive back, I believe. So one of those guys who was a very athletic guy who would go to a professional league, play corner, and be another really solid player. So next group of guys, 15 through 11. Taryn Christian, the first real superstar quarterback. Don't get offended, Austin Sumner, but Taryn Christian was the first original superstar quarterback at South Dakota State. 6 meetings against NDSU, went 2-4, 89 of 147 passing for over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns and 4 picks. He also ran for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Strevler went 0-2 versus NDSU. Should have a Peyton to his name as well. 46 of 87 for 416 and 2 touchdowns. He carried those South Dakota teams for that mid part of the 2010s. We debated on Zach Zenner. We have him in here at 13. My issue with Zenner, and I'll talk about it once you guys are done, he's 0-7 versus North Dakota State, 87 carries for 356 yards and 4 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, we know how good Tyler Lockett was in the NFL. He cracks our list at number 12. 1 meeting versus NDSU, 7 for 113 and a touchdown in that 24-21 loss. And then Brian Shore. Like we've said, he's the heir apparent to Easton Stick. He and Stick were very similar players. Shore, 1-1 versus NDSU, 25 of 50 passing for 390 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The 3 interceptions, I think, all came in the 2017 title loss. He also ran the ball 25 times for 28 yards. What do we think of this group?
Yeah, I think Taryn Christian's he's a part of that first wave of South Dakota State guys that built it to where, okay, now we can beat NDSU.
Yep.
Now we got to get to the point where we can beat them in the playoffs. And he never did that. Otherwise, he'd probably be in the top 10 here.
He was 2 minutes away from doing so
Yeah.
in that 2014 game.
Yeah, he's just a guy that dual threat guy. Because South Dakota State, I mean, Austin Summer wasn't really that. He was more of a pocket passer.
Yep.
Taryn Christian kind of built it to where, okay, the Bison always have a dual threat guy. We got to have that too. And then Chris Strevler, if he goes to today's day and age, he'd be playing at Wisconsin or something and tearing it up because this is one of the best QBs that the Bison have played. He just was on. It's a shame he was on such a poor team. I mean, that 17 team actually probably should have gotten to the semifinals back to the Fargo Dome, but they lost to Sam Houston. And then Zach Zenner, I think, he had two 100-yard games. He was a bowling ball. Talk about capitalizing on the minimal athleticism you have. No offense to him. Got to the NFL and played for a while. Tyler Lockett, I think that speaks for himself. I mean, he was a Julian Edelman type of guy.
The all-time possession receiver.
Yes.
You consider Tyler Lockett.
He did not take a hit. He was.
No.
I believe he slid sometimes when he
Every
caught the
catch he
ball.
made, he was either hitting the deck or going out of bounds.
And Brian Shore, I mean, up until this year, the one guy that's ever come into the Dome and won in the playoffs, and he almost did it twice. He almost won in the national title game. Like you said, a lot like Easton Stick. He's just kind of a game manager that made the big plays. This is one of the guys that beat NDSU that I don't have hatred towards because he seemed like a good dude. He never talked garbage in the media like some of these South Dakota State guys do and UND guys. This guy never did that. I actually appreciate him.
Going into this, I really like Chris Strevler. I mean, watching him sling the rock in the Dome was pretty remarkable. And, like you said, NIL's around, he's gone.
Yeah.
Zach Zenner, so we're in our production meeting, we kind of talked about this. I remember it was a Thursday night football game. It was Detroit versus Green Bay, and there was the Hail Mary game. And he is the first ever active NFL. He was the first ever player in NFL history to have the initial ZZ. But he's a bowling ball. he had led the charge against South Dakota, and even though he didn't win against NDSU, he kind of led the charge most of the time. And then Tyler Lockett, that's one of the most underrated receivers of all time.
Yep.
Brian Short, game management, and he could, and like I said with the other guys, he can sling the rock, but he was also responsible too with the turnovers, minus the 1 year he had 14 picks.
Yep.
But he could use his legs, could read the field well. This is perfect.
Yeah, Christian beat NDSU twice during his career. He had 5 school passing records when he was done with his college career. Chris Trevor just retired from the CFL. He played 7 years in the NFL. In the CFL,
Really?
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, just retired. Zach Zenner played 5 years in the NFL. He ran for 2,000 yards 3 times at South Dakota State. My problem is that against the Bison, he had some good games and some games I think he'd rather forget, like the notable, because we now dub it a Zenner when you have 4 yards on a play, because he had 8 carries for 4 yards against North Dakota State in any game. So he's a bit overrated because of the games he had against NDSU, which were some were really good, some were horrid, but good player nonetheless. Tyler Lockett, 3rd-round pick in the NFL, 1-time All-Pro, good player. But it's not often you see a guy like Brian Short have an All-Pro like Tyler Lockett, but you do on this list. Brian Short, he's the current tight ends coach at James Madison, so he's doing all right for himself. All right, top 10 time. Top 10. We'll start with Jerick McKinnon. Bison fans have memories of Jerick McKinnon. Apparently a lot of people do on Twitter. He was outstanding in that 2012 semifinal against the Bison. 31 carries, 168 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground against North Dakota State. He did throw 5 passes, 2 of which were caught. 1 went for a touchdown that we'll still never forget. Mark Gronowski at number 9. He owned Cam Miller. Let's just say it how it is. He was clearly the better quarterback in that rivalry for a long time. He had 6 games against NDSU, 4-2 against the Bison. He was 83 of 129 passing for just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. That guy knew how to take care of the ball against the Bison. 65 carries for over 322 yards and 2 touchdowns during his time playing against North Dakota State. Khalid Abdullah is probably my favorite guy in this group. 1 game versus NDSU, made the most of it. 180 rushing yards on 23 attempts and 2 receptions for 51 yards, a touchdown, and 10 push-ups. I guess I would describe that against NDSU. James Robinson, another guy that will never be forgotten by Bison fans, how good he was. 83 carries against the Bison, 424 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had 9 catches for 86 yards. Did go 0-5 against NDSU, but it wasn't because of him. That's for damn sure.
No.
And Tucker Kraft didn't have the greatest stats against NDSU. It's more what he did in the NFL, but still, he belongs in this top 10. 7 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Only 2 games against the Bison, won them both. So that's 10 through 6. Break it down.
Yeah, Jerick McKinnon. I think a lot of people around here actually like Jerick McKinnon because he played
for the Vikings, right?
Yeah, and he actually should have had a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but he did the.
Yeah, he slid down. He did the right thing.
Did what he should have done and got the Chiefs the Super Bowl. So yeah, that 2012 game will never be forgotten, and he was a big part of that. And then obviously Mark Gronowski. I mean, on those all-time SDSU teams, had the good record against SDSU, but then when the teams were even, Cam Miller came through and won the games. I'll just point it out, Tanner, if you're watching.
Well, okay, but Gronowski also had tore something in his shoulder, so that probably doesn't help either. But I agree with you.
And then number 8, Khalid Abdullah. I mean, that might be the best single game performance against NDSU in playoff history. I mean, that guy was unbelievable. I mean, in the pregame warm-ups I'm watching, as a 11-year-old or whatever I was, I'm like, this guy's on JMU. Why isn't he playing in Duke or North Carolina down there or something like that? But then number 7, James Robinson. He basically almost single-handedly beat the 2019 Bison in the quarterfinals. I mean, like you said, if they have Tommy Rittenhouse back then, they do win.
They win that game.
I mean, if they have a, to use the baseball term, a replacement level player, they win the game. That quarterback was not good. And Tucker Kraft, like you said, I think the 1 touchdown he caught was on a trick play that Pierre Strong threw. So he didn't have the biggest performances, but like you were mentioning in our meeting, he was always a threat to do something, and he was unstoppable. I mean, that's why he's in the NFL, and he's one of the best players in the NFC North right now.
Looking back at so foreshadowing, there is a ton of running back talent in our top 10, but Jerry McKinnon, not a lot of running backs have 31 carries and they can just torch NDSU like that. Marganowski, looking back at it, I kind of wish he was kind of in that, in the 8 to 6 range, just because how dominant he was. But it's also because the teams he had around him. Khalid Abdullah, 180 yards against a great NDSU rush defense. But James Robinson, that dude was a absolute freak in the run game. I mean, not a lot of players can go in between the cracks like James Robinson did in the multiple games they played. And then, Grant, what you said about like Tucker Kraft, yes, he did not perform. Like, it's because we had so many linebackers around Kraft, just guarding him, and even some safeties at times, which was hard for him to get open. But the way he could block, the way he could catch the ball, and his catching in the traffic and with the ball. So that's why I believe that he deserves that number 6
Yeah,
spot.
McKinnon also played 8 years in the NFL, won 2 Super Bowls. Gronowski won 49 games at South Dakota State. So it ties Easton Stick. He's also been anointed for sainthood in Iowa City for winning 8 games with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Khalid Abdullah, it's a shame he didn't have an NFL career. He was undrafted, free agent to the Giants. Didn't do much after that, which kind of surprised me going back and researching this. James Robinson, rookie year, he was a one-and-done player in Jacksonville. I mean, he played a couple more years after that, had nowhere near the production. He had a 1,000-yard season with the Jaguars in 2020. And then Tucker Kraft, second-round draft pick to the Packers in 2023. All right, top 5. There's your top 5. We'll go through it one by one. We'll start with the best running back the Bison have ever faced. That's David Johnson. There's no doubt. I can still see him going 80 yards by Marcus Williams in my sleep. David Johnson, only 57 carries for 336 yards in 3 games against the Bison. That's impressive. 2 touchdowns, 7 catches for 83 yards. George Kittle at number 4. 1 game versus NDSU. Yes, it wasn't that loss, but 5 receptions for 110 yards. Most of it was on that one pass that Nate Stanley threw to him, but he's on the list inside the top 5 at number 4. But still, the top tight end the Bison have ever seen is Dallas Goedert, who's playing with the Philadelphia Eagles right now. 2-5 versus NDSU, 29 receptions, 389 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp, the best pure wide receiver they've ever faced in 2016, 5 for 62 and 2 touchdowns against the Bison before he had his shoulder yanked out of place. But no surprise who number 1 is. It's Travis Hunter, the only Heisman winner the Bison have ever faced. 1-0 versus NDSU, 7 catches, 132 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and he also posterized Jalen Duffy. So, yeah, that's our top 5. What do we think?
Yeah, I think part of this is like I miss the old FCS because David Johnson would have been playing for the Hawkeyes in his last year. I mean, he was so good. I mean, he was good in the NFL for a few years too. People
one
kind of
year,
forget
he had
that.
one great year in the NFL.
He was he was like the number
one pick in fantasy, and then towards ACL.
Kind of crazy. And then Cooper Kupp, it's the same thing. It's like there's no way he would have been playing for either the Huskies or the Cougars in Washington his last year. But anyway, Dallas Goedert and George Kittle, the 2 tight ends. That Kittle speaks for himself with the NFL career, and he had a good game against NDSU too. Goddard obviously was dominant against NDSU, especially those last 2 years when they beat NDSU. And then my favorite thing about Dallas Goedert, though, is the day the quarterfinal game in 16, he posts, "Gonna do it again," #easy money. And then they lost 36-10. I'm just going to put that out there.
They did score 10 points to start the game, and then it was easy money for about 10 minutes, and then things hit the fan after that.
That was an underrated game, and just because of the next game the Bison lost. But anyway, getting back to the point.
More forgotten blowouts in playoff history.
It is. And, Cooper Kupp, this picture is from that Washington State game where he just went off.
Yeah.
And I believe Eastern Washington won the game.
I believe they did,
Yeah, Kupp, I mean, he only played one half, and he was unstoppable against the Bison. I mean, if he plays the second half alongside Kendrick Bourne,
I mean, Stu Stiles led him receiving yards like 160 or something like that. Kupp may have gone for 160 had he been healthy.
It makes you think like what would happen to some of these teams. It's like Kendrick Bourne and Cooper Kupp. There's just no way they would have spent their whole careers at Eastern Washington.
No.
And then Travis Hunter. I mean, I got the pleasure to see this guy in person. He's a freak athlete. I mean, he's super skinny, but he's just super strong, super fast. He can guard you. He can run past you. He can catch. He can do it all. This is by far the best player NDSU's ever played.
Yep. With David Johnson, what comes to mind is their defense would make sure that he does not get the rock. Guys, he still got the rock. I mean, he still had 7 catches for 83 yards. And when he got the ball, he was gone like that. George Kittle, we kind of talk about like Tucker Kraft kind of played that blocker role and everything. This is George Kittle on crack at Iowa, where he would block, and then maybe go out to the flat, catch a pass, 20 yards, he's gone. Dallas Goedert, he like you guys said, the best tight end NDSU's ever played. Not a lot of tight ends can say, hey, in 5 games I caught 30 passes for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's just for a tight end. especially, that's crazy.
Yep.
Cooper Kupp, it's pretty self-explanatory, and he already had 5 catches for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he had Kendrick Bourne alongside him in the same role. So who knows? It was that part of that 44 or 50 game, and Travis Hunter. Even though I might put my bias out there and be like, I really thought Genty should have won that game. I do agree on his placement on this list. I mean, not a lot of players can go out there, catch close to 10 passes for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a pass that I don't even know how he caught that. I mean, we kind of posed that question. Now we're like, what just happened? And then I think we forgot the most important part. He played defense too. And he had 3 tackles, and I believe he had a pass deflection. And so the top 5 list, this is how I believe it should be. And I love that we have an intermix of FBS players.
Yes.
And Cooper Kupp, that one outlier.
Yeah, so think about it. This is top 5. We have a number 2 overall pick who won a Heisman. We have a Walter Payton Award winner who won a Super Bowl MVP. We have Dallas Goedert, who won a Super Bowl, was a top 50 pick. Kittle was a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro selection. Injuries have slowed him down recently. He was a 5th-round pick in 2017. And David Johnson was an All-Pro selection, a 3rd-round draft pick, and he was #1 fantasy player for a year.
Most important part.
Most important part. That's what we have in our top 5 that have all played against North Dakota State. That's pretty good. So let me just go down. So the honorable mentions we had. There was a long list of guys that some we forgot about that the fans weighed in on. So honorable mentions we had. Aaron Bailey from Northern Iowa. 2 great games. He was just outside the top 25. Desmond King got a lot of love and played a while in the NFL with the Chargers. Tommy Mellott gets some love. He only finished one of the games against NDSU, but he was damn good in the game he was healthy for. Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, they were freshmen in 2016. They didn't play against NDSU, but they were on the roster. So there were 3 Pro Bowl tight ends that were on that Iowa roster in 2016. Kendrick Bourne, we talked about him. Bo Brungard is on this list. Now, I get it. It was just last year. It was 1 game. But that game won him the Peyton, that he put up all those yards against North Dakota State. As we alluded to, Antonio Brown, J.J. Watt, not on this list. I'm not going to lie. I think we forgot about Antonio Brown. I think he probably would have made this list had we made it maybe yesterday. We would have had more time to put him on the list. But he's probably 26, I'd probably say, on this list. J.J. Watt was a redshirt freshman tight end. He didn't play, so he's not going to be on the list. Tyrone McMillan is a guy who had 1 catch for 15 yards in that 22 game against NDSU. And then Jared Verse, 8 tackles, 1 sack, and forced a fumble against the Bison in 23. He also probably could have been on this list. But those are honorable mentions.
I think going back, I think that Jared Verse kind of has a spot in that 25 to 20 range. I think
26 and 27 are AB and Jared Verse. It's just what order you want to put them in.
Yeah, because I think that I think there's a reason why we kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean.
But then I also want to touch on that Iowa tight end room.
Oh man,
that is
how good was that?
That is I kind of pointed that out in our doc. I was like, hold up, guys, we got look at these guys that they have on the depth chart with Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson. And even though yes they're freshmen, if we just count they still play, they still saw it, those guys, maybe for one or anything, it's like you never know who could be those top 30, those top 3-round picks.
Yeah, I think Aaron Bailey, to this day, I'm still really glad he didn't play in that 2016 game down in Cedar Falls because I think that
they would have lost.
Northern Iowa was a problem back then, even late in the 2010s. And Tommy Mellott, similar player. It's like if you beat NDSU one time, you're on this list. Yeah. One time, and you just couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
And Brungard, man, I think we're gonna look back 5 years from now and be like, he might sneak into this list because he was that good. I think the recency bias, we're the opposite of that. I think we go with long-term bias more of. But I think, Jared Verse, it's a lot of people don't remember. I don't even remember him on the field, to be honest, that much. And he made plays and whatever, but it's like he played for the Great Danes. I just don't even remember him that much. And Tedoroa McMillan, if you go solely based off NFL stuff, he'd be on the list, but he didn't do anything really against NDSU. So I think we did all right. This was short notice type of thing, so I think we missed some guys. We also put some guys on that we shouldn't have, but I think we did a good job.
It's kind of hard to make a top 25 list with under 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
and it's not blind rankings, but it's being like, okay, this is like from our memories, and then kind of looking at the stats of that nature.
Yeah. So a couple days ago we put out this same question and say who the fans thought of. So the fans on X named 26 different players. They just bought their own top 25. So I counted comments as votes. So the fans' top 10 was Travis Hunter got eight votes, so 8 comments. So he was the best player. Number 2 is Jerick McKinnon. He had 7 votes. David Johnson and Cooper Kupp tied with 5 votes for the 3rd place spot. And Mark Gronowski is number 4, you should say, with 3 votes. Then it goes James Robinson, Antonio Brown, George Kittle, and Rhett Bomar of Sam Houston were in there. And then these following players got 1 vote. Brian Shore, Caleb Sanders from South Dakota State, Roberson, Tucker Kraft, Desmond King, Shador Sanders, Eric Breitenstein from Wofford. There's a blast from the past. Andrew Van Ginkel played against the Bison in 2015. Riley Stapleton, Mitch Unrein, and Tashawn Gibson. Some must have gone back to that Wyoming footage from 2009. Shaq Barrett from Colorado State. Tywan Jones from Eastern Washington. Jared Verse, J.J. Watt, and Dan Lefebvre, the quarterback for Central Michigan 2007. Probably one of the best MAC quarterbacks to ever play. So that's quite the list the fans put together there.
And honestly, I think this list showcases the amount of talent in the FCS guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially back when the portal wasn't a thing. And something else, it's like, what is this list going to look like 25 years from now when we've had time under our belt at FBS? That's what I'm excited to see, like what players are going to play now, especially now being at the highest level. But yeah, you're totally right. The FCS, there's nothing bad about the FCS level. There's so many great players. But
all right, we're running short on time, so let's get through hot takes quickly. So, Ibach, what do we got right and wrong?
Yeah, 2 things get crossed off. Just 2. Grant, on January 26th, you said Avery Kunin would win mid-major.
I should have said Summer League Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Well, I did. I actually got that right too, so I was wrong here.
But yeah, Brooklyn Meyer ended up winning. It's whatever. We'll move on.
I should have said Summer League Player was going to win
Yeah.
Player of the Year.
And then on March 18th, you said at least 2 1 seeds would reach the Final Four. Got it exactly right. Michigan, Arizona, obviously. Could have had 3 if Duke would have, taken a foul.
That's John Shire's fault.
Yeah, but yeah, the stats really haven't changed since last week, as you just added 1 completion to your board, and some things are going to start coming off the board though here in the fall with football. And
Okay, Peter, you got hot takes.
My first hot take is that NDSU will receive top 25 votes in the AP polls before the Northern Illinois game. I want to go into this because I believe that if they win the UNLV game, they will get propped up in the polls, and they will start receiving those AP votes.
I think they're in the poll if they beat UNLV.
You think?
Yes. They've been dying to put them in the poll. They've been at 27 after beating Iowa. They would put them in, I think, if they beat UNLV. Anyways.
My second hot take is Nathan Hayes will have over 3,000 passing yards. This is a touchdown if it's correct, and the only reason why this might be a touchdown is because, as we were discussing, we believe that the NDSU running back room will go crazy this year on touches and yards. My third one is that UConn will beat Illinois in the Final Four. It's a completion. It's kind of a gimme pick.
Yeah.
And my fourth one is NDSU will get 3 night games this year. Those night games, we are kind of uncertain what they will be. We kind of have one circled. That will be the Jacksonville State game when they open up the season. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of expecting like maybe a New Mexico game, maybe in that realm.
UNLV, you could maybe say there.
Yes, and then my fifth one. NDSU will have 3 transfers that go to a high major conference. Some of the guys I listed right here are Demario Wheeler-Thomas, Travion Carson, Noah, and I believe that Trayson Anderson will fulfill the Nebraska or the NDSU to Nebraska pipeline. But yes, I think that Noah will probably end up going to Wisconsin. I think Travion will end up going to maybe a high major, but also maybe could be a starting guard on a Power 4 low team.
Where's to take you off and go to High Point?
Oh.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And then Damari, who knows where the wind will draw with him, because he's a 5'11" guard once again. But I mean, what do you guys? Are you guys gonna rip those picks away?
Yeah, I like I said, I think the Bison could be a top 25 team. If they beat UNLV or they beat New Mexico, I think they could be a top 25 team. Because this is what we've seen with projection wise. We could see the Bison from 8-4 to 10-2 to maybe going undefeated. Who knows? So I would one up that and say they'd be a top 25 team. Nathan Hayes, I don't think he's having 3,000 yards. I think he'll be under that just because of how good the running backs are. They legit go, I think, 4 or 5 deep at running back this year. I think that's just how good they are. So that probably I would possibly shoot that one down. UConn is going to beat Illinois, so let's get past that one. 3 night games, Jacksonville State, I'm going to go 70% certainty that game's going to be a night game. UNLV, maybe. New Mexico, I don't know if they play that game at night. I could see like San Jose State being a night game just for some bizarre reason. Something weird like that, or Hawaii being played at night. One of those games being played at night, so I could see that. 3 transfers. The only reason they win is because they think they can play high major basketball. So I don't know what the market is for 5'10" guards, but we're about to find out. Travian Carson, he's got the tools that he does the dirty work that a Tom Izzo's going to love. So I could see him playing at Michigan State, maybe Iowa State if TJ's still there next year. We'll see. Noah Federson, he could be a Badger without any doubt. So I don't have a huge problem with these picks.
Yeah, I think the only reason that this Nathan Hayes one is a touchdown is because the Bison don't have 4-game playoff runs anymore.
No.
It's going to be like 13 games.
He's got 14 games max to figure it out.
And the Bison had 13 games this year, and Cole Payton was at 2,700. And like you said, they're probably going to lean on the run game a little more now that they're in the Mountain West. So that's why it's a hot take, though. That's why we like it. So if Nathan Hayes has a really good year, this is a touchdown. And then go ahead.
Yeah.
He would need around probably 220 passing yards a game to fulfill this mark.
He's got the arm for it.
Has the arm.
But yeah,
We'll see.
Obviously the UConn one is a completion if it happens. I think it'd be a pretty big upset if Illinois won. I think Dan Hurley in the Final Four are pretty hard to beat.
Yep.
The night game thing, I think one of these, I think they're for sure going to get 2. And I think that's what makes it a touchdown is if they get 3 because we just don't know yet. And the fact that you're predicting this early, I think that's what makes it a touchdown. And then, I think we're pretty certain at least one guy from this Bison team is going to go high major. I think pretty certain Travion Carson can. Sometimes these guys get bad advice, mostly in football, but sometimes in basketball, like,
what do you mean? You mean Twitter accounts that were launched a week ago and all of a sudden it's represented by them?
Yeah, all of a sudden there's an agency that was formed a month ago, and not even, but yeah, I like these hot takes.
Yeah, so again, we're running short on time. So follow us on X. We hit 600 followers. We're at 601 followers. That's good stuff. Next show, Tuesday at 4:15, it will be how we would fix college football. As the new FBS guys, we're going to figure this out. Yep. So scheduling, transfer portal, NIL, you name it, we're going to talk about it. So tune in for that. We've got just 4 shows remaining this semester. Hard to believe we're coming down to the end here, but we'll try to get some more spring ball coverage, maybe the spring game itself. We're trying to work on an interview, so we're trying to make some things happen in the last 4 weeks of the season. But thank you for watching. For Peter Avelka, Ethan Eibach, our great crew in the back, Jack Higgins and Cash Roman, this is Greg Hubbard. This has been the Bison Overtime Show. We'll see you next week. Horns up and go Bison.